You're listening to the Road to Wisdom podcast, weaving stories told by wonderful minds about all things motherhood, health, intimacy, politics, nature, and everything in between.
Join us on an adventure discovering unique experiences that we can learn from to enhance the ways in which we live.
We are your hosts, Chloe
and Keshia. All right, Chloe. So, talking about your birth stories today, and I'm really interested to hear it because even though we've done a little chatter about our birth stories, we've not gone into details. So, can we begin with who are you? Who's in your family?
Hello. Okay, so there's Brenton, obviously, partner, and 4 kids, Birdie, Pippa, Rosie, Banjo, in order. So Birdie's just turned 7, Pippa's just turned 5, Rosie's 3, and Banjo is 1. Yeah, I don't know how that happened.
They're my numbers too.
Really?
Yeah.
1, 3, 5, and 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously Birdie was my initiation into motherhood.
Yeah.
She was the one who started all of this.
So let's begin. So you and Brenton get an egg fertilized. Take it from there.
So we had sex once.
One time.
Yeah, just once. That's all it took. No, so yeah, we conceived Birdie very easily, which
Planned?
No, not planned. Big
Planned
surprise.
by the universe.
Yeah, the universe knew that's what we needed. That's what happened. So yeah, Bird's little seed came along, and it was a whirlwind, to be honest. Like, it was not expected, not planned, and so yeah, there was no preparation, no thought of, what am I going to do or how am I going to do this? It was just, it's happening. What do I do now?
Yep.
I remember peeing on the stick and I was just like,
Can I ask, what was the indication to pee on a stick?
Oh, well, my cycle was like clockwork at the time.
Okay.
Like, I've never had any cycle problems or like, I wasn't on the pill. I just obviously was trying not to have a baby, but also not doing anything about it. So yeah, I was just late and I was like, oh gosh, there's a very high chance I could be pregnant. So I got a test. So Brenton was working, and at the time we were living together. So he was at work and I had a friend over, and actually she was our housemate for a little bit. She was there. And I was like, I'm just going to go do it. And anyway, it was one of those times, and you've done as many pregnancy tests as I have. And you look at it and it's not. But then, so I did it and I looked at it real quick because I didn't know that you like have to wait for a long time. So I was like, oh, okay, good. And then put it down. And then I just like look on the floor and I'm like, oh my God, it's like 2 lines. I'm like, like hyperventilating. And anyway, I didn't even know what to do. Like, I had no family around. Yeah. And at the time I just recently had gotten back from being overseas. So there was like, I was kind of finding my feet again. And so there weren't many people around me. And I had no idea what to do, dude. I literally like called the closest doctor and went in and I was just like, I peed on a stick. It says I'm positive. Like, what do I do now? Like, I had no idea what to do. And anyway, he's like, okay, so I'm assuming you would like to get an abortion. And I was like, yeah, straight off the bat. And I was like, I don't know what indication I gave you for you to think that. Anyway, I was like, okay, I'm not meant to be here. Like, this is not for me. And so I just left. And then
did Brenton know at this stage?
No. No. It was the same day. Like, I'm fairly sure I took the pregnancy. Yeah, I can't remember. It's a bit of a blur. So I took the pregnancy test in the morning. Yeah. And then by that same day, I'd gone to like some.
Oh, wow. Just a random
GP. Yeah. Just for them to double confirm that I was definitely pregnant. But he was kind of like, if you took a pregnancy test and it's positive, like, you're pregnant. I'm like, are you sure? Anyway, so Brenton was at work and he got home and I was like trying to think about how I was like, I obviously couldn't keep it in. Like I was losing it, right?
Yeah. I can't believe you didn't like text him straight away. That's blowing my mind.
Yeah, but we didn't know each other for a whole lot of time prior to that, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, whoa,
it's big.
Not what big. I would have ever thought would have been my reality. And anyway, so he got home late and like he kind of just walked in and I was in the kitchen and I just looked at him like the most deathly look like and just burst into tears and he was like, you okay? Like what's going on? And I was like, I'm pregnant and just like fell into him. He was just like, there was a silence and then he was
a pregnant pause.
A pregnant pause. And he was just like, I mean, who knows what he was thinking? And he was like, it's all right. Like, and anyway, at the same time that was happening, I think he'd organised, because he has a combi, right? Like an old orange 1970
it's
combi.
Sick.
It's very cool. And at the time, I think the same day, like it had a flat battery or something. So he had organised to get someone to after work to like jump start it or something. So anyway, there was a guy at the front like putting in a new battery to the combi and I'm just like, I'm pregnant. And he's just like, I don't know, like for anybody who knows, like if you jump start an old car, you got to take it for a drive. Otherwise the battery goes flat. Anyway, so like poor guy rolls a joint. We both get in the combi and just drive up the mountain in Currumbin Valley in complete silence. And I'm like, what are you thinking? What am I thinking? Who knows? Anyway, we finally digest it all and, decide that it's an amazing thing to happen and like we're going to have this baby and we're like going to be a little family. And so pregnancy was cruisy. Like it was such an easy experience. Like I didn't have no morning sickness at all. Like it was as if nothing had happened. Like my stomach was just growing. And
dude, I hate you right now.
Most people listening probably will hate me for saying that. And we traveled a lot during it. We were trying to, it was, the wild thing was just that we were establishing life together and preparation for having a little baby within the realm of like Brenton's work and just all the things that, we had to fit in.
Yeah. Should we share with people really quickly what Brenton does for work and why you travel so much?
Yeah. So Brenton works in film and TV as an actor.
I'm sure most people would know that
and
by this
stage.
Most
people already know that.
For those of you who don't, there we go.
Yeah. And so, at the time when we met, he was working doing Pirates of the Caribbean and it was shooting on the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
Should I go into a quick, how we met?
Oh, yeah. Let's take it back. It's such a good story.
Okay.
Let's go.
Let's go back for a second. So Brenton was in town. Well, he's from Queensland, born in Queensland, but wasn't living in Australia at this time. He was living in America, in LA, and was just in Australia shooting Pirates of the Caribbean, which is a really long, like I think 7 months or something. And he was living up at Broad Beach at Peppers where everybody was staying from the film, and he just hated it and was then living with his mum down in Currumbin. And I don't think that was working either. So she was like, why don't you, look for another place to stay? And I don't know what went down there, but I had just got back from traveling overseas and I had this house and someone was moved. Oh, my friend was supposed to move up and she never moved because, a family thing happened. And so I had this room and I was like, well, I need someone to move in because I can't afford to pay for it. And anyway, this guy messaged me. He was like, hey, just inquire. Because I had an ad up on Gumtree, which if you're in America, the equivalent is like Craigslist.
Yep.
And so it was just looking for a roommate. This is the details. And I got so many calls and so many messages about the room and I was just over it. I was like, I can't, it's so many. Anyway, this random person messaged me late at night And I was like, yeah, all right, can you come at like really late? And he was like, yeah, okay. Anyway, at the time I just got back from doing like my yoga teacher training in Bali and done a whole bunch of yoga and meditation and stuff in India. So I was there was like a little front yard of the house and I was there doing yoga and doing my practice and whatever. And then he just walks in and I'm like doing a headstand and I just see him upside down and I was like, hey. And I was already like, oh, who's this? And I was like.
Did you know? Like when you saw him, were you like, I kind of recognize you from things?
Oh, no. I don't even watch TV, let alone. I don't get the starstruck thing. Like I'm terrible at recognizing people unless I've been glued watching like a series or something together and then I see someone, I'm like, oh my God, I feel really like, yeah. But with him, I was like, who's this? Like, anyway, he was like, we showed him around and he was like, yeah, cool. I think I'll take it. And I was like, yeah, cool. And anyway, he moved in like not that long after. And it was like it was such an instant, I don't know, like there was definitely an attraction there, but he was yeah,
you're both very attractive people, so I could see that happening very easily.
But he was working heaps, right? And I had no idea. So his story that he told me was, oh, I'm like, so what are you doing? Like, what's your deal? Like, what's your story? And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm just like studying music and I work in like a bar or something. I was like, oh, cool, that's awesome. Like, good for you. I'm really.
What's with this slide? Like, I'm going to be living with you.
Yeah, he obviously just. Yeah, he doesn't go around telling people, hey, I'm this guy doing this thing. Anyway, it was super just like, and I was like really into it. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like musician, like studying music, like art and blah. Like he was always like painting in the, yard and playing guitar. And I was like, I was very into it. And then yeah, something like it just obviously like we were hanging out heaps, like we were painting together, we were like getting sunrise coffees together. Like it was a thing. It was very enjoyable.
Yeah.
And
at this stage you still don't realise that he is not just working at a bar?
No idea. Anyway, something like he just didn't pay the rent. Like he was terrible at paying. And I was like, and I said to my husband, like, I don't think he's got any money. Like he's broke, obviously. Like he's studying like in the arts and like starving musician type vibe. Like I don't think I think we're in a bit of trouble here in terms of getting any money from this guy. Anyway, he eventually, like I have to give him a nudge. I'm like, dude, you've got to pay rent. And he's like, oh yeah. And anyway, pays it into my roommate's account. And so I never look at anything. Like I never even like think to, no one thinks to Google their housemate, right?
I think most people do.
Do they?
Yes.
Oh God,
I think
don't.
a lot of people just like chuck that shit into Google and just double check that they
Okay,
haven't got a psychopath
for the future, maybe
living with them.
Anyway, I didn't, did I? And anyway, what happened? Something was weird. Oh, he goes to me, oh, I've got a well, by this stage we were quite like there was an obvious attraction between us and like lots of, flirting and hanging out, and it was very lovely. And then he was like, oh, I've got to go to LA for this thing for the weekend. I'm like, what? Like, what kind of thing? And then like, who has a thing in LA for the weekend for this thing that I did once?
For the dude that doesn't pay his fucking rent.
Vague. I was like, okay, have fun. Anyway, like calls me in LA with his, and I'm like, what are you doing? Anyway, I just really had no idea still. And I was such a fairy. I was like, oh, cool. Whatever you're doing, that's really cool. And then anyway, my housemate was like, started just freaking out one day in the kitchen, being like, oh my God. And I'm like, what? And he's like, Brenton is dating Taylor Swift. And I was like, what? Anyway, she's like got on Google a picture of Brenton and Taylor Swift at like some party together. And I'm like, who is he? Like, what is going on? And anyway, that's when the cascade of like finding out what his story actually is.
Who the fuck this guy is.
Yeah. And then I was like, hang on, what is going on here? And I realized that, and then he eventually I'm like, what is, and I've obviously like said to him like, what is going on? Who are you? And he tells me, and he's here working on, and I was like, oh, cool. As like still at that point I was like, oh, like an extra or something. I was like, oh, cool, he's an extra. That's hot.
I think this is why I love you so much.
And I was like, oh, cool, yeah, he's an extra. And then I realised, like, he takes me to set and I'm like, he's the guy in the movie. Like, casually, hey, Johnny. I'm like, anyway, there's like helicopters everywhere and like there's all this stuff and I'm just like, whew, okay. Here we are.
That's brilliant. That's really good.
Anyway.
Smooth, Brenton, smooth.
Yeah. So obviously we don't stay housemates for long. We start sharing a room and anyway, we had a lot of fun together and it was a really brief time, but it was a really intense, good, amazing time. Like there was a lot there. Like we're obviously living together straight up.
Can we just
yeah.
Quantify, qualify,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the word is,
Yeah.
baby brain times 4. Was Brenton dating Taylor Swift at this stage?
No.
Okay.
So later on I find out that it was just a bit of a PR thing.
Stunt.
Like because they did a movie together and they were at a party and you know like press people would just be like get together and think about it and then pull a story from it. It's kind of like that.
Brilliant.
That's what I tell myself anyway.
Taylor Swift's dated everyone, so
yeah, that's what I tell myself. Like he did not date Taylor Swift before me. No.
it was anyway. He's stepped up if that was the deal.
He's definitely stepped up.
Sorry, Taylor, we love you.
Bless her. She didn't stand a chance. No. Anyway, so that's that story. I'm sure we could keep going there. But
okay, cut to Birdie is a little seed in your belly.
yeah. So, and that's the other thing with Brenton and I. Like, we don't really give much thought. Like, it's all just feeling based. We're like, yeah, it's just, yep, it's happening. Like, we make decisions, like big worldly life decisions just
on the whim.
Exactly.
Yep.
But it's always been the right decision. And so yeah, it was a bit of it was obviously like a bit of an intense time because like Brenton obviously wasn't living in Oz and I was.
Yeah.
And you know, like he was planning to just be there for the shoot and then return back to LA. And so in amongst all that I had to kind of decide like, okay, well, I guess I have to go to LA. Like I have to integrate into, you know, his world. And which was obviously not on my radar considering I just got back from doing like Vipassana in India, silence yoga, and I was like, you know, just a totally different world, right?
From one side of the spectrum to the other.
Yeah. And so it was a bit of a roller coaster. Like I was really just like, whoa. Like I'm having a baby, not planned. And by not planned, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was. And yeah, so there was a lot of moving parts to my life at that point. And so yeah, we're traveling a lot. And
so did you seek out some advice or professionals or whatever pregnancy wise? Like were you looking for that in LA?
No, because so Brenton just kind of went to LA to do some stuff and I stayed at home because I was just like, I don't want to have a baby in America. Like I knew that much that I want to have a baby at home. And so actually by complete chance, Brenton and his mum were having a coffee and it happened to be like right below my midwife's office.
Yep.
And they randomly just saw it and they're like, oh, and Fiona, Brenton's mum, was like, why don't you just go in and like check it out, which was weird because I wasn't actually there, but she's a midwife herself. So I think she just had that thought like,
yep,
this is the path, which I'm super grateful for because it was the best fit for me at that time because ultimately I had you know, like I think I mentioned before in our intro that I obviously have, you know, knowledge about health and all of that, but birth and pregnancy was just really not.
It's not on your radar
It's
until
not
it's
the
on
same.
your radar,
It's
right?
not the same as you can't know health but know birth in that way until you've really gone through it several times, right? And so anyway, I went in there and I met Steph, who became my midwife, and I think she was the perfect middle ground for me at the time because she kind of just allowed me to make up my own mind, and she just gave me the information and I went for it and just made the decisions that I felt were right I wouldn't make any of them now. I probably wouldn't do a lot that I did. But anyway, just, yeah, I was with her.
In terms of planning the birth?
Yeah, so the plan was, so Steph and her team at the time were very home birth centered midwives, but I just didn't feel like, I was scared of it, to be completely transparent. Like I was scared to have a home birth because I had never birthed before. Like it wasn't on my radar.
Did you know anyone that had home birth?
No.
Fiona, did she have any
information? No, she was hospital midwife, and I think more, like that was her world. And so, as they really encouraged me, like Steph and her team, like that was their thing. And I was like, no. But that was fine because she, had a connection with the hospital as well in the birthing ward. Yep. Which is beautiful. It's like, I guess if you're going to have a hospital birth, it's the ideal place, the ideal setup. So the plan going in was that I would just have, a normal physiological water birth in the hospital and then go home 4 hours later.
This is the birth centre?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, cool.
And then fast forward to due date, nothing was going on. I was 10 days over. And in that 10 days was so intense because you know what it's like to get to that point in the journey and everyone starts telling you this shit. Like, like someone told me I had a 1% chance of having a baby naturally after that. And I was like, okay. And
who is this person?
All this fear starts coming in and people tell you what they think you need to do based on either their experience or what they think they know, what they've seen, all of that. And so I was starting to really panic. I was like, and then everyone's like, you need to be induced because if you don't, then you'll, this is your outcomes. This is what's most likely going to happen. And I was like, what the heck? And anyway, thankfully I had Steph to kind of
ground you.
Yeah. And she was like, that's rubbish. Don't listen to this shit. You've got this. We'll wait. But then when it started like creeping up to 42 weeks, she was like, yeah, let's do it. If you want to do a stretch and sweep, we can do that. And I was like, I didn't even know what a freaking stretch and sweep was, right? No idea. Didn't like.
It sounds quite a passive thing too. Like I had one
friend.
That's
exactly what I thought it was. I thought it was
and sweep. Like we're just stretching and sweeping. Like
sweeping the kitchen after my kids have just made a mess. Yeah, like it's a massage or something, right? I agreed to it. I was like, okay, all right. It was freaking intense, and so invasive and so uncomfortable. And I feel like if I didn't do it, I would have probably had that night or the next day because as soon as I had it, I left and I was in early labor. So Brent and I both left and I had an appointment for electroacupuncture straight after that appointment. Yep. And on the way there, we stopped at this little art store to just we always did, have a little look and get some stuff. And I was like, oh, I am feeling so tender. I'm really cramping. This is, I think, whatever that stretch and sweep was, it really hurt. I'm not feeling great. I'm feeling pretty raw. Anyway, I go to my acupuncture appointment and I last 20 minutes and I'm on the walls, oh my God, the contractions are so intense. And I'm I got to get out of here. I go home and I'm in the car, just not okay. The cramps are so intense. And I just thought they were cramps, right? And I remember Steph being early labor, just you guys go for a walk on the beach, rest, just do what you feel don't get too caught up in it. Once it starts happening, just you may be there for a long time. And I remember just being in the car on the way home being if I'm supposed to go for a fucking beach walk right now, I'm going to die. I'm not going to make it. I'm going to end up having a cesarean. If this is the start and it's going to, I had no control at all. My mind was I was not with it. Anyway, I get home, I shower, get water, I need. And anyway, I'm please call Steph. I'm really struggling already. And she's oh, on the phone to Brenton, oh yeah, she'll be right. Just go for a walk. And then she can hear me and I'm like, she's like, oh, wow. Yeah, no, she doesn't sound, no. Let's come in if you can. And I couldn't even get down my stairs. I was like so close already. And then I was like, so from our house to the hospital where she was born is like half an hour drive. And it was a long half an hour. I was hanging over the back seat, like holding on because I couldn't sit on my bum anymore because I was that far along already. This was like 50 minutes after
the stretch and sweep.
No, acupuncture.
Oh, okay.
But prior to that, I was like strong, like really feeling the cramps.
Yeah.
Anyway, like got to the car park. I was like, I can't sit down. Like I can't get. This is not. I'm really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so she like got me in a wheelchair, and I'm like not being able to sit down, and I'm like, this is intense. Like if I'm at the beginning, I'm panicking because I'm like, I'm not in control.
Yeah.
Anyway, like I get into my room and it's like dark. The pool's there, the water's there. It's like she's got like salt lamps and candles, and like I'm like, oh, okay, like I take my clothes off and I'm just like, I got to get in the pool. And I just got in there. I was like, my whole body just like I just got in there, and I was blocked off, and I just went into it. And it was just us. Like obviously no one was there. No one was coming in, poking, prodding, nothing. Like I was just by myself with my own thoughts. And yes, I got in, and I was just like, from then I felt like I had complete control. So I was moving with the contractions quite easily. Like it was obviously intense. And then it was really quick, like 40 minutes in there.
From when you got into the pool?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane. Okay, so what was the time frame from the stretch and sweep until?
By memory, it was like 10 a.m. appointment or whatever, and then she was born at like 2:35 or something in the hour.
Are you serious? Dude, that is insane.
It was intense.
That is intense. That is actually
it's too quick.
Yeah.
You don't want that for your first birth because I feel like obviously you don't know what to expect, right? So you're going into it like, and I had this plan where I was like, oh, we'll eat, we'll dance, we'll put music on, we'll go to the beach, we'll have a swim even, like we'll do, I'll run a bath, and I'll put, my oils on, and I'll even journal a little. I'll journal. I don't know. I'm going to have plenty of time. And that was not the case for me. Like that rug was ripped from under my feet, and I was just like, I couldn't land. I honestly could not land on my own 2 feet after that stretch and sweep. And that's why I think had I just waited and really, and because I was apprehensive about all of the shit, like there was an inner knowing of how I was going to do it. And I'm quite connected to my own, intuition and what I know to be right for me. But there's a lot of cloud. There was obviously a lot of cloud there. And so when I was trying, it took me a little bit to land in that moment. And then when I did, it was such a peaceful experience. And then going back to the actual birth, like there was no interfering. Like I was really lucky. I had a beautiful physiological normal birth.
Yeah. So you were in the water.
I was in the water.
And then you started pushing. Did you have like the fetal ejection reflex, or was it like a proper pushing?
No, it was well, it was kind of like no one was like, okay, push now. It was like a total just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Like, and you just real
know.
Deep.
Yeah. You just know. And I was so vocal and primal, and it just like I roared my baby. I roared them all out. Like I really did. But yeah, and then so the setup with having a private midwife in the hospital is as your baby's like coming out, you call in a second midwife to witness the birth or whatever it is. And I had no idea that this person had even walked in. And I kind of just like looked down and like I pushed Birdie out, and I like got her out. No, did I? Yeah, Steph was like, pick up your baby. And because she was kind of like at the back, because my birthing position was like on my knees, kind of like with my hands over the pool. Yep. So I was like more or less on all fours.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, I grabbed her out and just like lifted her up. And my first words to my baby were like, that was so easy. And I looked at the midwife, the second midwife, I was like, who are you? Like, I had no idea who this person was. And she was like, it was easy, was it? I was like, honestly, that part was like, that was absolutely delicious. Like,
did you feel the difference from that really chaotic place? And I remember feeling that where you just feel like everything is out of control and that a bit of panic.
Yeah.
I've had it mildly in 2 of my births and massively in one of them. And then when it came to like birdie crowning and that and your body just bearing down and pushing, did your mindset change? Like, did you feel that tangible change?
Because you're like, we're here. We're here. I'm here. I made it. I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah.
It's like you have an inner dialogue where it is like that primal knowing. There is a knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you allow for the clouds to clear, you can get there.
Yeah.
But I was really lucky because I had someone who wasn't interested in interrupting that, and she played her role really well. She just observed me.
Yeah.
And she witnessed the birth of me and my baby doing the dance. Whereas many midwives, I mean, I'll just generalize, but I feel like it's rare for that person and those people in the birthing world to let go of their ego and just actually sit back and witness birth.
But even their fear, I feel like the way you're explaining it, Steph didn't have fear around birth.
No.
And she didn't bring that into the space. Whereas like with so many midwives who have seen so much, they've seen some pretty traumatic stuff, especially if they've worked in a hospital. So, and then that comes into your space and then all of a sudden they panic because if they do something wrong, well then they're liable.
Screwed.
Yeah. So it's that awful cycle, but.
Yeah. So, I was really
incredible.
lucky to have a birth like that for my first birth. And then after that, I was like on such a high and I left the hospital 4 hours later. But it was really, looking back, it was such a, and just after she was born, like, we had that skin to skin, like there was no interruption. There was no one coming in. There was no one, in our halo, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, and then I was okay, and I just don't even know if I have the vocabulary for it, but I definitely wasn't. It was, what is that? Like that post-birth.
The high.
Yeah.
It's a high.
It's such a high.
Such
and
a high.
I was
Everything is the best.
Yeah, it was the best. And I was so excited and so, I was so proud of myself as well. I was like, I just fucking did that. Like, I did that.
Oh my God,
and I was okay. And I was okay. Like, I'm so good right now. Like, this is what I wanted. This is what I got. Like, sure, there was some things that I wish I didn't do now looking back, but I didn't know any better at the time. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, like, I was like, screw all those people. Screw those people who told me I'd have a C-section because my baby was late. Like, no, she had her day. That's what she wanted. It may have been the next day had I not have interfered at all. And it would have been the same process, maybe less intense and less quick. But
how was Brenton through all of that?
Brenton's funny in the birth. And he's just like, I think he's just like this whole time, like, and for anybody obviously can't see me, he's just like eyes wide, just like in complete shock, amaze, or just like, whoa. And
because that's quick for him too. Like,
totally.
You don't really, I mean, I can only speak from my experience, but like ours was 22 hours. Like the first baby was 22 hours. So there was a long process. By the time that baby came out, like we were both very ready for it. We were exhausted. Like Toggle was fucked. I was fucked. The baby came out and it was just like, oh my God, like that was that huge working process. But what was it, 4 hours?
Yeah.
4 hours. That's
for my first birth.
For your first birth. So like that is a huge.
It's intense.
Yeah, that's intense. And it's a massive thing to process. And you guys have had to do it in like the shortest period of time. Yeah.
It's kind of how we do things.
Big things real fast.
Yeah. But yeah, then we went home 4 hours and 4 hours later, and yeah, it's such a weird thing, right? Because you don't know anything about any of that, but you go home and you've got a baby and you just suddenly, it's on your boob and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And like, it's like I forgot the instruction booklet. Like, what am I doing? But you're just doing it.
Did you do any preparation in terms of post-birth? Like,
honestly,
did you know
it was not
anything?
on my radar. So we did like we did, and here's the other thing I was really lucky with is that Steph was really hooked up with, like, breastfeeding is the only option really. Like, and that's the other thing that I loved about having my midwife, and I was really lucky, is because I made it really clear what my intention was, what kind of birth I wanted. And so there was never a time where she was like, you know, you could just have an epidural, you could just have something. It was just like, it's not available for you. This is what you want. This is what you're going to get. Mm-hmm. You're in it. Good luck. And I actually really appreciated that. But the other thing is that she was really, really into breastfeeding. And so I did invest a little bit of time into that prior. I had some horrible, like, my breastfeeding journey with Birdie was horrific. Like, Brenton was milking my, like, squeezing like little tiny droplets of liquid gold into syringes, like trying to get something, because Birdie's latch was, it felt like glass shredding my nipples every single time she would go on there. And this went on for like 6 weeks, but I was like, there is no option B. Like, I'm breastfeeding this baby, and I'm not, there is a way. Like, do not, I can see shit coming out of my boobs. Like, there is milk there. I'm a woman. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. And I'm going to do it. And don't give me any other options. And I exhausted every last option and I ended up getting there. But it took like a solid 2 months to really be comfortable breastfeeding Birdie. And it was not easy at all. But I had that support too, which was amazing. But yeah, my postpartum was hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was. Like, I had no one really around that was teaching me what I actually needed. Like, I was really much in the scene where, you know, you still did everything because I don't know. And I'm not a good receiver.
Like Beyonce,
so I feel like,
right?
Yeah.
Beyonce, like, she sang a freaking song about how we push our babies out and get back to business. So
yeah,
that's like, yeah.
And it's a lot of that's also because I'm a terrible receiver too. Like, even if someone was like, oh, I'll come over and cook like a bunch of meals and clean your house, I'd be like, no, thank you. I'm okay. But really, like, you know, like, I know now if a mother says that, you're like, sit down.
Yeah, it's
just
almost like
sit your ass down. I'm going to do this.
Yeah,
or just you don't even talk about it. You just drop a meal. You just do the cooking for 4 weeks, 6 weeks. You just go to the house. You just clean it.
Yeah.
You don't even talk to the mother. No. You just do it.
Yeah.
And I definitely did not have any of that. You know, and I look at, you know, my friends now that are about to give birth and all of the things that are happening to them, and they've just got like meal trains and, you know, people looking after their kids and just all of the shit. I was like, wow, that was not the FME. And you would have been the same.
Yeah.
Like 7 years ago, I just feel like it was still
shifted.
more about like, I'm going to buy your baby a gift, and you know, that's what it was about. It was about
I'll come over and hold your baby.
Yeah, I'll come over and hold your baby.
Yeah.
Can I have a hold?
Oh.
You're like, and at the time you're excited and you're proud and you're like, this is my beautiful baby. Yeah, of course. But
let me show my baby
there's something about it in the moment. And I remember like allowing a lot of people to come over and hold the baby. And I'd be sweating like still and bleeding and just feeling so tapped out and so not with it, and like can't talk, and just feeling like a feeling of like, what is the feeling? It's like just so,
this thing happened to me.
And I'm not saying it's like this horrible thing, and it's like, it's a big thing and it's not to be interrupted. you shouldn't, I don't know, like I just don't think that you should go, like at the time I thought it was a really beautiful thing and people were coming to visit and like bring gifts, and it is a beautiful thing because it's a lovely gesture and everyone's excited, but there's no regard to what has happened. And yeah, that just was very apparent when I had Verdi. It was not mother-child centered where people were, you know,
trying to enforce the bond that you guys need to
like
build.
This is about mother and child, and there's a whole lot of things going on, and people think once the baby comes out that's the end, but they don't even, you know, it's not even, oh, the baby's come out, it's still connected to its, you know, placenta, like it's life, like that is still giving the baby life after it's born. It's like you cut that and you think that the baby's all good and then everything's good and you just go on with life and mum can, you know, do what she was doing.
Now you're not pregnant anymore. You're just exactly the same as you were pre-pregnancy, aren't you? Yeah. I feel like the culture's shifted. It's definitely
shifted a lot since then, but I wasn't even aware of it then. I always had these feelings. I was like, this just doesn't, I just don't want to be around. Like, why are there people in my house? Like, I can't. But I was people pleasing too. I was like, yeah, come over. Like, if this time works for you, no regards to the fact that my baby needs me or it doesn't want to be held by a stranger or, you know, someone feed me. I haven't eaten in a couple of hours. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't even have that on my radar because I just didn't know that was a thing. So, yeah.
But also too, like to add to that, you're running off those hormonal highs in that first part. Like I remember feeling so good that like I think my mum offered to make me food at the start and I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm not hungry at all. Like, and you just push away any help because it almost feels like if you accept it, then you're not feeling good. Yeah. But like you are feeling good and everything's great. Yeah. So you have to show that you can do, like you don't need other people to do anything for you. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's been a massive process of shutting that shit down because especially like I tell my friends now when they have their babies and those first few days, you're going to feel great. Like you're going to push that baby out and you're going to be running this hormonal high where like you're like everything is the best. Rest. Use that energy to recover because everything is not like it. And I hated when people said this to me, but it's an injury. You've just pushed a human out of your body. You've got this massive void within your stomach that needs to recover. You've like the physical elements of it that you've just given so much of your body to create this life, then to push it out. Now you're giving more to like ensure its survival.
And that's the thing, like you don't even think about the, you know, yes, physical touch, it's tangible, whatever, but you don't even think about all your other senses. Like I remember really clearly one day my mother-in-law came over when Birdie was 3 days old and with the most beautiful intention said to us, why don't you go get a coffee, just you two, like I'll hold the baby. And I was like, oh, okay. And you know, at that stage, like we were like really struggling with establishing breastfeeding. Like, you know, we were co-sleeping, so I wasn't sleeping because I was scared I was going to squish my baby. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll go. And I remember just sitting at the cafe, like shaking almost. Like I just felt not like I should not have been there. Like my whole body was, it's like I had a fever, like I was shaking and I was like, oh my God. And I just thought it was like, oh, well, I just had I haven't been sleeping and whatever, I'm not drinking coffee right now and I'm just obviously really tired. But it's taken me up until like, you know, recently to realize that coherence and the smell of your baby and that hormonal, you know, cocktail that exists on your baby for days and weeks after it is born. Months. And you touch it and you smell it and you put it on your mouth and it absorbs into you and is a part of you and is required for the signaling of your body to heal and to come back to itself. And it's like, it makes me cringe to think that I happily put that distance between us. And I've done it many times. And I did it in a big way with my second, which I'll share. But yeah, it's we totally disregard the things that we can't actually see or science can't explain. But that's a massive thing, and we can see that, oh yeah, you shouldn't separate mum and bub at birth because, you know, there's something. We just know that.
Yeah.
But there's a whole primal
Now it's
waterfall of things that, you know, your baby's born and, you know, the mother will be like, oh, and then communicate like the first word, and it's signaling something to the baby, and the breath, the touch of that air with the perfect amount of oxygen touches your baby's face. Not anybody else's oxygen, not anybody else's breath, your breath, and your touch and the whole thing, that whole, like, it's, you can't explain
the
it.
smell of your
And
sweat,
science can't explain it, but it's everything. It's just you two. And that is required for like the first breath, the neurological development of the first minute, second of the baby's earthside experience, and cutting the cord off. And we're only just getting to the point where like, oh, well, it's not pulsating anymore. It's white. We can cut it. It's like, you don't know what is happening. No one knows what is happening. We can't just cut stuff and then be like, Mum, you go there, have a shower, go down for a coffee. Baby can't, I'll be right, yeah, I'll let you know if it cries. It's like there is so much in between it, and we're only just
figuring it out.
It's taken me 7 years. Like, I wish I could go back and just be like, okay, get the hell away from me, everybody.
Yeah.
I'll see you if you're dropping a meal or changing my sheets because there's breast milk everywhere and I can't do any of this. I'm, you know, but also like it's no one's fault.
No.
Like it's
a journey.
Yeah. And no one knows unless you say what you need. And I didn't know what I needed, and I'm only just figuring out now, bloody 4 babies later. And even though I've had 4 babies and I'm like, I still don't know.
Yeah.
Like I still don't know what is the best, how to have the absolute best outcome. Like, yeah.
Well, on that note, so how old was Birdie when you fell pregnant with Pip?
So Birdie was like 16 months old. We were living in LA, so we moved back to LA when Birdie was just about to turn 1. And we actually didn't spend a whole lot of time there because we were kind of all over the place traveling, and I don't know, at one point we would kind of like, you know, we would want our baby to have a sibling, like for sure. Like we're doing it. We're going to have like heaps of kids. And we're like, all right, well, let's just see what happens. And then the next day I was like, oh, I'm pregnant. Obviously I'm exaggerating just a little bit, but yeah, like we're very fertile and just can make babies very easily, which I'm very, very fortunate for. But yeah, so I actually didn't know that we were pregnant straight up. I still had a little bit of like I got my cycle back just over a year after having Birdie. So I was still in that adjusting season of my cycle and everything. I was breastfeeding a lot. And so I wasn't even expecting to get pregnant so easy because I was breastfeeding. I now know after 4 babies, that is not a thing.
It's not a thing.
It's not a thing.
Not a thing.
So if you're not wanting to have a baby, do something else. Anyway, we were going to Japan, and I was so excited to go to Japan because I was like, oh, the food, this, all the things. And I got there and I was like, oh, I just don't feel like eating. Like none of this food makes me, like I'm not feeling it. And I was like, oh, I should be getting my period. Oh. And I just had no energy. Like we'd met some of our absolute dearest friends over there, mine and Brenton's, and I was just like, I can't be bothered doing it. I'm so tired. Or maybe it's the jet lag, like LA to Japan. That's a big one. I'm just feeling, and I was like, oh, I bet I'm pregnant. And I got back to LA and I was like, yep. And at that stage I was like, oh, well, I know I'm going to have I think I'm good to have a home birth now. Like that first experience was just, you know, easy. As easy as I thought it was going to get. So yeah, I'll go home. We'll go home later on, and you know, I'll have Steph again and have a home birth. And that was the plan. Like I had another really easy pregnancy, no morning sickness, apart from that little bit of food aversions.
Yeah.
That was it. And so yeah, went back to Oz, and had Steph again, and it was basically like the exact same experience. Like we'd have all the same appointments, but this time I was just more like, I know what I'm doing, like, you know, second baby. And then so we'd planned, so at that stage Brenton took a job in Canada, it was a really big job. We were going to be spending, you know, like at least 5 years there, back and forth. And so it was actually great, you know, in hindsight, because we would be home and, you know, like it was when he was finishing that roundabout is when people would be born, and then we'd be home for 6 months. It was actually quite great. Anyway, what happened? Oh, I think I was in Canada and then I flew home with Birdie, and Brenton would be coming home soon. And I was like 34 weeks or something pregnant, I think then, 33, somewhere around the end anyway. And I was out for my friend's baby shower, baby blessing. It was actually just a really casual lunch at the Spice Den. So it was like spicy food. And I was like, oh, you know, I was 35 weeks pregnant then. And so I ate all the food, all the goodness. And the next day I woke up and I was like vomiting. And I was like, oh, I must have eaten something bad at the Spice Den. And then I started like, it felt like a gastro thing. And I was like, oh, this isn't convenient. Like I don't have time for this. Anyway, it kind of just lingered for like 24 hours. And then I started feeling like cramps. And I was like, oh, that's weird, because those cramps are like pretty consistently timed. And I was like, so I just started panicking. I was like,
At this stage, Brenton's still in
this
Canada.
stage, I'm alone. Brenton's in Canada, and I have a 22-month-old. And I was worrying, and I was like, I'm gonna call a babysitter, because Brenton's mum was still working as a midwife at this point. And I was like, I'm just gonna call our babysitter and just see if she can come over and just take Bird down, and I'll just rest. And at this point I was just getting like more and more in, like these cramps were just, you know, and I started timing them, and I was like, oh, this isn't good. Anyway, I call Brenton's mum, and I'm like, this is what's happening. She was like, I'm coming now, and just leaves mid-shift. And Brenton's cousin, who I'm quite close with, Kate, she was around. She was living near me at the time, and we were really close. So she came over too. And she's like, we'll take you. But my midwife was also on holidays at this point, so I couldn't talk to her. And I had her another midwife. I think it was Maria. I actually can't remember if it was Maria or Rose. It's how I think it was Maria. I met her. She was like, oh, I'm at the hospital, so if you want to come, I'll just check you. Like, we'll see what's going on. If you want to put your mind at ease, like, I'm sure it's nothing, like, you're fine. You probably just got a little food bug. Like, you'll be right. And I was like, great, this is what I want to hear. I didn't have no bags packed, because I'm planning to have a home birth, right? Like, I've got my box, I got my pool there. I'm like, I'm doing this at home. I've made up my mind. And got to the hospital, and it was the same room that Birdie was born in. And I was like, oh, this is cute. And the whole scene was just so far from what I would have wanted. I had my mother-in-law, I had Kate, who, you know, not the worst people to have around, but it's just not what I envisioned. It's not what I envisioned. It's not what I wanted. And I had a team of people around me who I had never met before. And Maria was like, I feel like by your body language and what your body's telling me, like, I feel like you're in labor. And I was like, Brenton's not here. I can't, like, this isn't the plan. I'm in hospital, and it was really brutal, because so when you're flying home from Toronto to Australia, there's like one flight, and it's like at 8:45 p.m. and you get to Australia 20 something hours later. And anyway, like, just before, he was like, I'll leave now. Like, if you think you're in labor, I'll leave now, and I can get that flight, and I'll be there in like 20 hours. And I was like, no, babe, just don't worry about it. Like, I honestly think I just got gastro. Like, I just feel like I need to just get it out and I'll let you know.
Is this before you got to the hospital that you had that conversation?
Yeah. I was like, don't come home. It's okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I go to hospital, don't talk to him again. And I'm assuming during this time, Brenton's mum's like communicating with him, being like, no, the baby's it's coming now. And he couldn't get home for another, like, he couldn't leave for like another 24 hours after that.
Yeah.
And it takes like 24 hours to get home. And so, yeah, she's like, you're having this baby. And I was like, I was not okay about it. Like, I was not in the headspace. I was not prepared. I thought like, and I was only 35 weeks and 6 days. I was like, why? Like, why is this happening? Because my other baby was born at almost 42 weeks.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't like, we didn't talk about like, oh, what if the baby comes early? Anyway, it was a horrible experience. I was just trying, like I was ramping up. I was like, all right, I'm doing this then. I'm going to have this baby. I'm going to give birth to my baby. She's going to be fine. Like, I didn't think about anything else going wrong. And I had this stupid nurse trying to like shove a drip needles in my arm, and I was like, the pain was just fucked. Like, I was in labor, and I was like, get away from it. Like, and I was like getting so frustrated. I was like, just fuck off. Like, and I had like the whole room, it was bright light, like there's people around, and I had like, family members there, and I was like, whoa, I felt angry. I was pissed off.
Yeah.
And I had people talking at me and like trying to shove shit in my arm, and I was just like, I was really angry. Anyway, she was born. She was tiny. She was 2.7 kilos. Birthed exactly like I did with Birdie, basically. Like, it was my thing.
Can I ask, what was the timing from when you got into the hospital to?
It was quick. It was like the same as Birdie, less than.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And so I birthed her.
Were you on the bed or?
Floor, earth birth. I couldn't get in a pool because they were idiots trying to do all sorts of monitoring and stuff, and I get it why they were trying to do that. Like, I was admitted, like, that's what they want to do, that's what they try to do. And I felt like there was no one there advocating for me, like no one there that knew what I wanted and who I was and how my body worked. So I was in a sea of just, you're going to get what you get here. And I was so vulnerable. Like, I had no partner, nothing. And anyway, so I birthed her, and like I got her off the ground, and I like held her, and I was like, you're okay, like we're okay. Just that whole primal, the speaking that you just unconsciously do. And then they were like, okay, we're going to have to take her, and she's not breathing or something. And I was like, what? She's fine. And anyway, like the whole cascade of just like take her, cut. Like, I guess it was probably like good, I don't even know, like a good chunk of time before, but not half an hour or 40 minutes or an hour. It was like, maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then cutting cords, taking her, putting her under bright lights, and being like, we've got to take her. She's not breathing properly. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what do you mean? Like, she's fine. She looks fine. Anyway, they take her, and I'm with my Mila trying to clean myself up, like trying to just, like I'm obviously just giving birth. There's fucking shit everywhere. There's blood everywhere. I try to take a shower, but I'm like, just cannot stop shaking. My whole body's just going into like shock and just, like I'm not even here. Like, I'm not even thinking. I don't even know how to put like one foot in front of the other type thing. And then, that's really when the shit just began, because they took her and I didn't consent to anything happening to her. My mother-in-law went with her, and they started giving her like IV antibiotics, hooked her up to all this shit, admitted her to NICU, and I just walked in later. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is happening to my baby? Why have you done this? I have not consented to this. I don't know who's consented to this. Somebody has, but it's not me.
Yeah.
And I later, like, it was during the time where I was, trying to process what had happened to me and Pippa. My midwife was like, they should never have done that. Like, they can't actually do any of those things without consent. And I was like, Well, they did. Like they didn't even, and she's like, my midwife basically was like, usually we would, you know, send for cultures for, you know, if there's got to be a reason, like we would only want we would advocate for you to only do antibiotics if there was a good reason why. And at the time,
did she have a fever or
at
anything?
the time, the justification was because I was presenting unwell. Like I had apparently had a high temperature. But now that I know, you know, several years later what a freaking fever is, I wasn't worried about it. And I wasn't worried about it then, even then I had no idea that, you know, possibly there could have been a complication. But yeah, so it was such a horrible experience in the sense that like I was obviously by myself and my other baby, Birdie, was just like somewhere, don't know, with someone that I don't really trust. And Brenton's on a flight. If I don't even know if he is, like there was so much going on. I didn't even have a phone. Like, and then I had Pip just like in NICU, couldn't touch her. She was tiny, 2.7 kilos. And they were like, do you want a bed? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm just going to sit here all night. Like, I'm not obviously leaving the hospital. Like, are you kidding me? And they were like, oh yeah, why don't you just go up to the maternity ward? And I was like, okay, for what? Like, and they'll just make sure you're okay. I was like, okay. So no, it was just like, I was just like
add on.
Yeah. And I was like, where is my midwife? Like, where is my people? Like like I chose this for a reason. Anyway, no one told me about after pains either. Like that wasn't on my radar. And I just was the biggest ball of mess, like in the maternity ward by myself with a whole team of people. I had no idea who they were. They had no idea who I was. My baby wasn't there. I was like full fevering, like the worst after pains ever. And I was like, and they're like, just take drugs for it. I'm like, no, it's not how I roll. Just, I'm okay. Like this is actually what's required. I'm not a hero. It's just what's required. I am going to breastfeed my baby. Like, what do you think? I'm just going to drug myself? Like, no, thank you. Not my jam. Anyway, I learned a lot actually through that journey. And yeah, obviously I had to have another baby which I'll talk about another time as well, to have a similar journey to realize that the hospital really just is ticking boxes. But yeah, I held on to a lot of grief over that birth. Like it took me, I still think about it. And when I learned something new about like baby's first breath or breathing or, you know, the coherence between mother, baby, you know, environment and everything, I'm like, fuck, that was unnecessary. Like that was so unnecessary. And if only anyone in that room knew what's actually needed and required, that wasn't necessary.
So I've got a couple of things that I want to touch on. But firstly, I was always under the impression that a baby under 2.5 kilos, like 2.5 was kind of the cutoff to then go into NICU. So if she's 2.7, like you would have had a case there to have her with you, which like I think I could be wrong. Midwives out there.
I think you are. I think you actually might be because when Banjo had to go, he was like over 4 kilos.
Yeah. Okay.
So because it was a breathing thing.
Okay, and so that's what they said for Pip as well. It was a breathing.
It was a breathing thing, and I was like, and because they were like, you know, she could have sepsis, and I was like, well, now I know that every baby could have sepsis, and everyone who walks into a hospital could have sepsis. So they just treat it because it's what they've got. That's what they work with, and it's within the framework that they're trying to get around.
How long were you guys in hospital for?
So she was in NICU for 3 days and then a further 7 to 10 days all up. But it was such a drag because like...
So wait, NICU for 3 days and then just
special nursery for 7 days. But by like day 4, I was like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Like I can hold her. She's getting stronger. Like I've got a fridge full of milk because by then I was like, I'm going to start pumping like the minute, because I couldn't do anything else. So like I was sitting there in NICU and just pumping, and I was like, that's all I could do. It's all I could think about doing was just like making sure I don't have the same issues I had with Birdie. Like make sure I can feed my baby, make sure I can feed my baby. Like she's on like they're feeding her through a bloody tube. Like I want the breast milk going in there, nothing else. And so, yeah, it was just protocol. It's like, and I mean, I'm not saying I know everything, and I'm not saying that what I'm saying is right, but from my observation of spending twice in that environment, it was exactly this, 2 different babies, totally different journeys, totally different issues, and treated exactly the same as every other baby in there. And it made me really realize, I'm like, well, something's not right here. Like I feel like these are issues that could have been avoided, but I just I don't know. I'm not a midwife. I'm not a doctor. Yeah. Like,
how do you advocate for yourself in those situations when you haven't had the experience?
Because I learned post-experience. So I had to have the experience to learn about it. And since I don't take everything a doctor says as gospel, I'm going to go look at stuff after and I'm going to figure something out, because in my whole body, I know that something's not right. Yeah. And I know the way that it was handled wasn't right. And I know that it's going to have long lasting effects for my baby. Yeah. So I'm going to figure it out. And I've tried. And then there's a lot of it. I'm just like, I had to walk that for some reason. Yeah. And I did. And what am I going to do about it? Yeah. So, but yeah, so it was quite traumatic. I mean, not as traumatic as some, but it was my traumatic. So I still definitely hold on to it's just a little bit of like anger towards certain situations where it still doesn't really make any sense to me. I'm like, there's no rhyme or reason for that. But yeah, she's groovy now. Pip's good now.
She's a grooviest.
She's cool.
Thanks for tuning in to the Road to Wisdom podcast. To join the journey, you can follow us on Instagram at theroadtowisdom.podcast and at www.theroadtowisdompodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. We look forward to seeing you next week with more juicy content.